welcome, welcome, welcome. We're very excited today to have Modesta speaking with us about wholesaling and how to improve your wholesaling processes and what will make you a really good wholesaler. Modesta has a great background. She's got terrific education. She's a real estate agent that makes sure that people are taken well care of. She's married with one child. Is that
two?
I get that correct? You have a daughter, correct?
Two girls.
Yep. Two girls. And she's very passionate about helping distressed sellers. Mm-hmm. And we love to work with people that we can solve problems. And Modesta's one of those wonderful people that loves to solve problems. So before you start, Modesta, I have this book that I just received, which might be really good for your wholesalers. And it's written by a friend of mine. We were in the exchange world together, and Wayne Palmer wrote this book called 101 Recipes for Riches in Real Estate. And it has 101 different formulas of ways to put deals together. So even if you are a wholesaler, a lot of times you think you have to do cash and that the flipper you're selling to has to do cash, but there are lots of ways to put deals together. So I just wanted to introduce that book so your people could find more ways and help them help distressed sellers. So please.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for changing my name because I wasn't able to do, to do that. But we got it figured out here. So that's great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peggy, for having me on today. As Peggy mentioned, I've been in the industry, I would say a little over 6 years now. Let me see here. It's not looking. There you go. Have some information here about myself. I have my bachelor's in finance, and I also got my MBA pretty soon after that. And I actually, right after college, started working as a Lean Sigma specialist. So I had my green belt and my black belt. So I dealt a lot with, I actually worked in a steel manufacturer where they had a lot of like machines, and they were building a lot of metal and stuff for like medical in the medical field, and also planes and things like that. So my job was to look at the process and to eliminate all of the waste within the process so that they can produce more metal within a certain amount of time. So I honestly took the position because I needed a job, right? It was right after college. I needed, that's when the real world starts. But I feel like, things happen for a reason. And I learned so much throughout that process. And I was excited when I got into real estate and realized that there is that Lean Sigma specialist is needed within every industry. And so when I was brought on as the COO of Girl Buy Houses, I was able to sit down and kind of figure out how to eliminate all of the waste. And I'll kind of go into that about how we started with just me and my partner and where we're at now and how we got there. So I get asked a lot, how do you do it, right? Because I have two little girls. They're 14 months apart. They're basically twins. I mean, everyone thinks they're twins. But I also run this business, and I have a lot of people that I manage throughout the day. And so I get asked, how do you do it? And so these are three pictures that I felt like were very, very descriptive on how my day-to-day goes, right? But also how a wholesaler's life is. I feel like there's a really weird misconception about being a wholesaler. I actually posted about this in my social media the other day about it, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, wholesaling's like the easy way to get into real estate. I don't believe there's an easy way to get into real estate. Everything requires work. And for those that know what a wholesaler is and what we do, it is a hustle every single day. I mean, every single day we're trying to find a buyer. We're trying to talk to sellers. We're trying to log sellers up, deals up, I should say. And we all know that once that deal is locked up, that's just like the first part, right? Then there's going through the title and making sure we get a clear title. Then there's finding a buyer and all of that. So it's definitely a hustle. So I just kind of thought these pictures were pretty funny on how things are handled on a day-to-day basis. But why are processes so important, right? So without a proper business system in place, you really can't scale. So when my partner and I first started, we didn't really have an idea where we wanted to be in terms of like, we just knew that we wanted to make money and that we wanted to help sellers. But we didn't really have an idea. We didn't have a goal set in mind. So we were kind of doing everything within the business. And as soon as we started to scale and close 2 to 3, deals a month, we realized that we had to kind of sit back and really, really try to figure out like what the SOPs were, like what was our distinct position within the business, like what were our individual responsibilities, instead of saying like at a weekly meeting, like, okay, well, we need to get this done, and yet no one's written their name afterwards and no one's held accountable, right? So we wanted to make sure that if we wanted to take it to the next level, we had to make sure that we were putting processes and things in place. So one of the first things we did, and I'm happy I have this book here. Have you guys read Traction or heard of Traction? I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Traction, maybe not read it. It is a pretty intense book. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It is very intense, but it's extremely good for anyone who runs a business. So my partner and I actually sat down and read this book. And one of the first things they talk about is the fact that you really have to define who you are within the business and what your responsibilities are. So we determined who the CEO was, what their responsibility was, along with COO. And as you can see on the bottom here, I manage everyone at the bottom there. So my job is to make sure that things are running smoothly, and I'm managing everyone at the bottom. So CC stands for cold caller. We also have one acquisitions rep at the moment, a lead manager. We have a transaction coordinator, an inspector, and a follow-up specialist. So I'll go into details on what that is. So our cold caller is making, a certain amount of calls on a daily basis. And as they get leads, anyone that raises their hand and says, hey, I have a property to sell, they're sending us leads through our system. Our rep is the person that actually handles all of the calls. So I'm going to skip her for now, and I'm going to go over to our lead manager, because our lead manager is the one that actually handles all the incoming calls in the beginning. So what we noticed was before we just had an acquisitions rep. And so she was handling all the calls. And for those that have handled seller calls, what your day-to-day looks like is a lot of people saying, F you, don't send me a postcard, I hate you. I mean, and you can imagine I'm being nice with what I'm saying. So that's what a lot of that is what they deal with on a daily basis. What we noticed with our rep at the time was that she was kind of getting depressed. I mean, she would talk to people and she was just mentally not there. Whenever there was a seller that was super motivated, she just wasn't there. So what we did was we hired a lead manager. So our lead manager is basically taking all of that. And so we prep her for that, right? From the beginning, we have SOPs that they have to review and things like that. And she basically handles all of that and eliminates all of the rude people, I guess you can say. Whenever there is someone who is actually motivated, then they'll talk to our rep. So our acquisition rep is the one that actually is locking deals up on a daily basis. So our lead manager right now is also doing our follow-up. So a lot of our leads, I think 95% of the deals that we close are follow-up leads. So I think that's really, really important to know, because I feel like that's another misconception where I feel like a lot of people, especially newbies, think that, you're going to get a seller call and you're going to lock up the deal and you're going to close it. And that's not the case. We do a lot of follow-up, and we have a lot of follow-up procedures within our organization to make sure that we're following up with our sellers. We also have a transaction coordinator. So the transaction coordinating position was actually the first position that we found once we got to a level where we were doing 2 to 3 deals a month. We were actually able to find someone to handle the title part of it. So that's what it is, a transaction coordinating part of it. So they handle all the title work, making sure that the sellers have everything into the title company and that the title company has everything. And then they schedule closing, excuse me. And on top of that, our transaction coordinator also does a lot of our inspections, which for the deals that we do lock up on the phone, right now we're not doing too many of them, but in the past we were locking up, I would say about 90% of the deals on the phone. So they would actually go out and take pictures of the property. So a lot of our deals, we personally, like my business partner and myself, we actually don't see them physically. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully that doesn't sound, oh geez. I'm sorry, Peggy. Give me 1 second here. So I can you guys hear that noise?
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
We'll ignore it.
Text messages coming in. Okay, here we go.
More leads.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, but I want to make sure it's not a distraction. So, so our inspector actually goes out, takes pictures. So they take about, I would say 100 pictures per property, and they'll actually send us the pictures with an inspection report. So we're actually not going out to take a look at the property ourselves. So that was one thing that we wanted to make sure that we eliminated within our day-to-day, because that takes a lot of time, right? Going out and talking to sellers and taking pictures and things like that. So we just pay them a fee per inspection. And then, as I mentioned, we have our follow-up specialist there. Any questions regarding this here? No? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I have a question, but we're going to ask questions after if you want to wait.
Oh, that's right. All righty. So then our overall flow of the deals and leads that we get. So our marketing, our primary marketing is direct mail. So we send out about 25,000 postcards a month. And we are located in a lot of different areas. So we have a JV Boots on the Ground program where we work with people in different areas, and we actually mail their marketing and we handle all of their calls, and we basically JV on deals with them. So that's what we do. So we're in different locations like Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and things like that. So basically we market and then leads come in. Smartphone is the phone system that we use to make calls. And we also, as calls come in, they automatically go into our Podio system, which is the system used to like gather all of the leads. So it rings to, as I mentioned, our lead manager gets the first ring, and she's required to make sure that she's picking up at least 80% of rings that are coming in. So she handles that. And then she'll live transfer the call if the seller is ready to talk to our acquisitions rep. So typically our rep is talking to sellers about 30 to 40 minutes per seller. She goes through a sales process, and I'll go through what the sales process is. And then either it's a no-go, either they're not ready now, we're going to put them on follow-up, or they're just not a good candidate for us, or we're actually giving them an offer. And if they accept it, then the contract is sent out, reviewed with the seller, they sign it, everything's virtual. Then we schedule our property inspector. So our inspector will actually go out and take a look at the property, take pictures and things like that. Then we'll review it. And sometimes what happens is, depending if we did lock up the deal, we may have to go back and renegotiate based off of what we locked it up. And I'm going to just say this. A lot of times sellers just forget to mention that their kitchens have like a huge hole in it and that there's water coming in. It's like they forget. I don't really know what it's called, or that their basement's flooded, or that they're missing a back wall. Like those things are just forgotten, I guess, in the conversation. So when we talk to them, we're asking all these specific questions about their property, and we're locking it up based off of what they say, right? And we're very specific when we do talk to them and say, hey, our offer is based off of what we discussed, and this is where we're at. So that's another reason why we ask for pictures. So our inspector goes out, he'll take pictures, so that way we can provide the pictures to them. Because we do deal with a lot, I will say this, we do deal with a lot of sellers who have not seen their properties in years, right? So as you can imagine, it's been 20 years. They think the property looks the same. They've had a tenant in there. Tenants sometimes just don't say what's going on. So we provide the pictures and say, hey, this is why we're at this number. So it does help a lot of times. So then we renegotiate if we have to. And then if once that's all complete and the agreement is signed, then it's handed off to dispo. I do a lot of the dispo, which is a disposition, which is finding buyers, like going out there marketing and looking for buyers and things like that. And so once we find a buyer, and this is very high level, there's a lot that goes into in between, but very high level. Once we find a buyer, everything's transferred over to our transaction coordinator. So we'll let the seller and the buyer know. And our transaction coordinator does all the check-ins with the seller and buyer, making sure everything's good to go. I review the final HUD, make sure it looks good, and then closing is scheduled. And we go to closing and we get a check. So that's pretty high level on what our process looks like.
Great.
So yeah, okay. I know questions are after, Peggy. So so I put this on here. Who has used my Fitness Pal or knows about my Fitness Pal? Has anyone? No?
No, we're more in the commercial world, so.
Okay. All right. My Fitness Pal, it's okay. I think Angel's saying yes, that she knows what my Fitness Pal is.
Yeah, it's a workout app, and you can keep your calories in your diary and stuff.
Yep, you plug in you plug in what you eat, and it'll calculate your calories. And it's actually really good because when you first log in, it'll ask like, "What's your weight? Do you want to lose weight? What's your sex?" and things like that, and it'll tell you how much you should be eating. And then you plug it in, and it'll calculate every day. Pretty cool, right? But we've all seen this daily responsibility, right? I hope so, right? Growing up, my mom had one of these on our fridge. Me and my sisters would have to check every time we did something, right? I actually have one of these for my husband too. It's my honey list.
The honeydew list.
So basically the reason I brought this up is just that within any organization, everyone has to be held accountable. And we have a lot of that within our organization. Our acquisitions rep, as well as our lead manager, they all have KPIs. So the key performance indicators that they have to provide to me on a daily basis. And so with the key performance indicators, they're basically, and I'll go over what they are exactly within our organization, but basically all it is just business metrics to analyze where we are currently within our organization. And where they are they meeting their goals? So if they're able to meet their goals every day, that means that they're able to meet their goals on a monthly basis, and we can meet our goals within a yearly basis as well. So this is just an example here. I just screenshotted it. It's probably not the best, but this is what my rep has to provide to me on a daily basis. I want to know how many new leads she handled, how many processes she went through. And I also added another one. I have to update this slide here. Along with new, I want to know how many follow-ups she spoke to on a daily basis. So she's marking everything down every day. I want to know how many appointments she scheduled, how many offers she's made, and how many contracts are out, and how many came in, right? And for her, she's required 2 contracts a week. So what this helps me do then is when we meet, because we meet every day at 9:30, if we meet and she didn't meet her goals, that will help me backtrack and figure out like, well, what happened? You know, was it something within the phone system? Did we not get enough leads? Well, why didn't we get enough leads? Like we had an issue a few weeks ago where we didn't get enough leads, and it turned out that our mail house didn't send out all the letters that they were supposed to. So we were able to backtrack that almost instantly and figure out what had happened. So that's the beauty of keeping up with your KPIs. I feel like KPIs just tells you a story of where you're at within the organization. And then these are just some examples of what my lead manager has to provide to me as well. Just how many new calls, how many live calls. That's huge. I want to make sure, that she's handling all the live calls that she can as possible. Ultimately, what I tell her is mail is not cheap, guys. I can't tell you how much money we spend a month on mail, but it's not cheap. So I want to make sure that whoever calls in, we're picking up immediately. So we want to make sure that we're tracking that. And then there's some other things on there too. She has to confirm appointments and things like that. And as I mentioned, we do meet on a daily basis. So we meet every day at 9:30. Typically the meeting's about 10-15 minutes. I try not to have it any longer than that because I want to make sure that it's a productive meeting and we're not talking about the cat and, anything else. It's just about leads. So we'll go over her KPIs. We'll go over specific leads or any issues that she's having or anything that I have to bring to the table or discuss. And then she goes on throughout her day. So we're all virtual. I know a lot of companies out there don't really agree with the virtual, but we actually love it. So my girl's based out of Virginia, another one in Florida, someone's in Indonesia. So it's nice that we're all, in different areas here. And so my business partner and myself, we also hold a meeting a level 10 meeting, which is we just go over our finances and things like that every single week on Fridays. As I mentioned, it's the daily meeting is just to go over what happened within the last 24 hours and discuss any issues. And then the level 10 will go over the scorecard. We'll deep dive the metrics. So if there's any issues that popped up, we're trying to figure it out at that moment and going over the financials, making sure we're on budget and things like that. And so one thing that is mandatory with our sales rep is that she has to attend a sales training. So I don't know if anyone has heard of, it was John Martinez, the REI Sales Academy, but now Jerry Green is the owner. And so they are required to attend that on a weekly basis. We do follow their sales to the T. So if you have any issues like talking to sellers, I highly, highly recommend. There's a lot of YouTube videos on it as well, but their REI Sales Academy is amazing. And so she must participate. I mean, I'm a part of it as well. So one thing that I always mention is, we look at all of these football players and basketball players, and although they're very good, like for instance, Michael Jordan was playing and he was very good, but he was practicing every single day. So sales is something that has to be practiced on consistently or you're going to lose track of it. So one thing that we do, I think it's in the next one here. Yep. Is we review 1 to 2 calls on a weekly basis. All of our calls are recorded. And so I review 1 to 2 calls with my rep on a weekly basis, but I'm also reviewing her calls on days that we're not meeting and then providing feedback. Not all of the calls, I'll just pick a random call and we'll review it. And we'll go through the process, because you know what happens, like you know a process, but then sometimes you start to get a little loose with it because you think it happens to everyone. So we want to make sure that everyone's following the exact process and how it needs to be, and just providing feedback and learning new things, because you learn something every single time. And there's been a lot of times where my rep will be like, man, I would have never caught that if I didn't re-listen to this call. So it's very, very good to record your calls and to go through them. And there is a rubric that's filled out. And this is something, it looks like that. Basically, I just want to make sure that everything, I rate it. So the 5, this row right here, I grade it. So setting the stage, for in this example, was a 0 out of 5. I don't think I did it for that week, but you can see it'll be like a 3 out of 5. And then I'll provide feedback as to why I didn't give it a 5 out of 5. So it's something that we do on a weekly basis. And so these are just some of the systems that we use. As I mentioned before, we use Voxer to communicate. It's like a walkie-talkie type of system. Podio is the system that we use that all of our leads go in, and all of our follow-ups and things like that. And then smartphone, as I mentioned before, is the phone system. And then Textly is what I use when we have a deal that we locked up, and we're sending out like a mass text to our buyers so that they can, have first dibs on the property. Okay, and I think that's all I have, Peggy. I had some other questions, not too, yeah.
That's absolutely fabulous. So my first question is, are you franchising this?
Am I what?
Are you franchising? You have a system in place. Most people never put a process in place. They don't put a system in place. What you've done, you've systematized the whole thing. You've actually got the whole thing set up. This is a sellable item you have. You could either set it up as an app where they pay you weekly or monthly or whatever. And like you said, I have to update this. So if they're in your process, you update, they'll get that update. Like that. So if you're doing it as a franchise, or you're doing it as a monthly fee to wholesalers,
right?
You've got this process in place. If they have it, they'll be successful.
Right.
And what they don't realize is, because most wholesalers I've ever met, they just do it themselves, right? You don't do it yourselves. You put a whole process in place where you have somebody that does the interview, you have somebody that does the follow-up, you have somebody that handles the paperwork, so that you have your time to do other things.
Right.
In the business. And look at the meetings you have. You guys meet every day. Most businesses never meet. Well, some never meet, but once a month, maybe once a week. So what you're doing, because you have at least 2 leads a month, at least. So I have a couple more questions, but thank you, Cliff. My standby always has questions too. So go for it, Cliff. And this is a great presentation, Modesta. I think this
Well,
is
thank you.
great. For wholesalers, this is spectacular. You should do
Like-
something else with it and we could talk.
Thank
I
you.
would definitely agree with Peggy on that. I mean, I've never seen anyone put together a wholesaling business like you have. And I did wholesaling. That was one of the things that I did after I was in real estate for about 4 or 5 years, and I absolutely hated it. But I was the one man show, and everybody that I knew that was doing wholesaling was doing the same thing. You know, I was driving around, in the dark of night, banging my bandit signs up on telephone poles, in very obvious areas that you would not want to do during the middle of the day, with, using a Google number that, was made on a burner phone. So no one could ever track me back with code enforcement. So, and that's a grind. And then I was sitting across the table with people, negotiating with them on their property. And then I had to come up with all the pricing myself. And it was very stressful. And it was the most miserable thing I've ever done in real estate. So I love what you've done. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, what is your monthly marketing spend? Because if you're sending out 25,000 postcards in a month, I cannot imagine what kind of marketing spend you have, because that's just a piece of it.
Yes, I think that I want to say it's anywhere between 10 to 15,000 a month.
Easily.
Yeah, with systems too. I think everything all in all with the marketing and systems like Podio and smartphone, we have to pay for all that.
So in the cities that you operate in, you really aren't going to have competition.
I mean, some cities are competitive, but
who's going to spend on marketing what you do? I mean,
right,
some might,
yeah.
I mean, so you're going to have the majority of the market share, I would have to imagine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you're determining your repair or replacement prices in the market where the property is located, how are you doing that? I mean, I know you get the pictures, but it varies so much from city to city. And I did a tremendous amount of research whenever I used to price things out with my wholesale deals.
Yeah. So we have a contractor that we work with. So if we had any issues, we always review the pictures with him and he'll give us some type of idea. One thing I want to mention is that when we do talk to sellers, we emphasize multiple times, this is an estimate based off of what we're discussing, right? Because things can change. I mean, a lot of times, like a good example is foundation issues. Like you can't really sit here and say, okay, I'm going to add $10,000 for foundation issues. We all know that could be like $20,000, $30,000, right? So it's just like, oh, it's an estimate. We emphasize that. Now, my rep also uses I created this rehab. It's very simple on Excel. She just marks it in there and it just automatically calculates and it gives her what the offer would be.
That's great. Yep. That's another process.
So but we emphasize that it's just an estimate. So, and it can change. Like some of the areas that we're in, they're like rental areas, they're not flip areas. So for, rentals, you're not going to put $30,000 in a property. You may put 10,000 depending, because some of the areas that we're in, ARV is like 50,000. So as you can imagine, you're not going to put $30,000 in. But so we know that ahead of time going in. So they know like it's a rental area. So they're most likely going to someone's going to rent it.
And you're selling to wholesale, to flippers, right? Those are your, or
investors.
do you sell to users?
We do.
Wholesale.
Yeah. We post it on Facebook Market, and we do get a lot of people that are looking to buy their own home. Yep, and have cash.
Sorry, Cliff. Another
very,
question,
very nice
Cliff?
system. Okay, I'm done with my questions.
Okay, David. What you got, David?
Oh, I can't hear you, David. There you go.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Peggy, everybody. I have a question. I kind of came in late. So your system sounds pretty amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions. Who does your inspections and how thorough are they? And because that's really important. And how long are they at the property typically? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, our inspections are pretty thorough. I mean, I'm talking, we want within 100 pictures. And so the SOP that's provided basically gives them an insight of exactly what we're looking for, right? So I tell them, We want a picture. I would like a picture in each corner of each room. Anything that's sticking out that looks weird outside, I want pictures of every part of the outside. Anything that looks off on the outside, then pictures around the neighborhood just to see what the neighborhood looks like as well. So we pay them in our area, we pay them $100, and they're in there for what, 15 minutes? And all they have to do is take pictures and fill out a report. So our inspectors, the ones that we have now, they were either contractors, like, so we look for like ex-contractors. And
Yeah.
so that has helped a lot, because when, if I were to ask like a random person to go out and tell me, oh, is this shingles? They may not know what that is, but a contractor is going to know. So they'll put exactly what it is on their report.
Do they do a roof inspection also?
Typically they're able to tell by just looking at the roof, but if we need to do a roof inspection, then we just send someone out. Like,
But they'll tell you that, right?
Yep.
Anything else, David?
David?
Yeah, I had another question. In reference to, I mean, like I said, I kind of come in late. So is most of your marketing headed towards out-of-state sellers with rental properties typically? Or I'm just curious what you guys look for.
Sure. Vacant properties, high equity vacant. So a lot of it, I'm sorry?
You said vacant properties?
Yeah, vacant, high equity, vacant.
Oh, okay.
We also do probate. We also do evictions. Evictions is a big one.
Right.
And what are some of the other ones?
And you said you were in Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
and Virginia right now.
Oh, and Virginia. Yeah.
As far as evictions, there's like an eviction list you can get a hold of and things like that?
Yeah,
Follow-
it depends on the place that you're at, like the location that you're at. I know
Right.
some areas it's like public. You can actually go in, and it's very manual though. Like you have to actually type in and put people's information in.
Right.
And that takes time. We used to do that. We used to go to the courthouse like every week, and we were there for like 3 hours.
Wow.
An eviction. So it just depends on your area. You got to go to the city and figure out like what they do there.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And this is
Yeah,
great.
of course.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention to Cliff, like the reason we started the JV Boots on the Ground was because of that, Cliff. Like the fact that so many people, they want to close deals, but they don't want to deal with the systems part of it. They don't want to deal with the having to manage a rep, having to manage a cold caller, so that's where that benefits, us working with other people that want to close deals and things like that. So.
You have another question, Cliff?
Yes. How have you seen, since you're in it sounds like 4 different states, how have you seen trends changing with the number of hardships that you're coming across now in the last, I would say, year and a half?
Yep. So we definitely have seen a change in our buyers. So our deals are sitting a little bit longer. So in the past, we were able to tell our sellers like, hey, we can once we lock up the deal, we're able to close within 2 to 3 weeks. We have now increased that to 3 to 5 weeks because it's taking us a little bit longer, especially properties that are full guts. A lot of people are just not comfortable with that. So I find myself spending a lot of time talking to my buyers now, just figuring out where they're at. Like, do they have the funds to close on another deal, to make sure that I know who's actually actively looking. So in terms of sellers, I still feel like a lot of sellers are unrealistic in terms of price, because they keep mentioning like, well, that property last year sold for $250. Well, unfortunately, there's a property, right? There's a property listed for $250 that's been on the market for 3 months and it hasn't sold, that looks similar to yours. So we can't use those numbers. But that's why I emphasize like follow-up, because these people, like sellers, typically come back. If they are unable, like if we give them a price and they're like, hey, will absolutely not sell for that, they're calling us back within 2 months because they're realizing now that things are changing.
Yeah.
This is typical of this market.
Yeah.
Have you seen an uptick in the number of properties that you're working with, more hardships that are out there than normal?
The COVID, yes. The COVID, we're getting a lot of sellers that are calling that did the COVID mortgage
Forbearance.
Yes.
Yeah.
They did not.
Because that ends November 30th. It's totally ended.
Right. So I want to say this, but I'm like a little, cautious about it. The ones that I've talked to, I don't think understood what they were signing. So the issue that we're having with them in particular is that they owe too much now
Yeah,
in
they're
order
upside
for it
down.
to be a cash deal. So they're stuck with this property and then they're about to lose it and they owe too much. Like yeah,
They're
it's tough. So
trapped.
we're seeing a lot of that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to change our numbers on foreclosures for 24.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that.
So what do you do with a case, something like that? Just out of curiosity. So they owe more than the value of the property, correct?
Yeah, they owe more.
I don't
I would
understand.
say for a cash offer, for an actual like cash offer, they owe too much for that. So we utilize a lot of realtors in the area. So if we can't make it happen, then
Short sale,
the realtor is listing it for them. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So that's what we're doing, Peggy. But I like the book that you mentioned. I'll probably get that just because we're looking for other creative ways to help our sellers, especially in that situation.
Yep, there's a lot of ways to do that. But when somebody, I mean, they had the forbearance, but they didn't make any payments. Did they lose their job? I mean, some people did lose their job, but people thought that they were in a great place by not making payments,
Right.
not realizing that they were going to have to make the payments.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to do a refinance. And when they had the opportunity, when the rates were down at almost 2% up to 3.5%, they didn't do it then, which
Yep.
is right. And now it's over. They can't get it. They don't qualify anymore for that. So all the states you work in, are they attorney? I know Virginia is an attorney state rather than an escrow corporation. Do you have
North Carolina is also attorney.
and Florida's attorney?
His title and attorney.
Yeah,
Title
we
oh,
work
it
with
is?
title companies. Yeah,
And Pennsylvania.
title.
Oh, and by the way, everyone, I just want you to know that this lady that's got this monopoly going, she's from Reading, Pennsylvania, which is, if you ever played Monopoly, was
Oh yeah,
one of the trains.
yeah, railroad. Yep.
She could own all 4 of the trains. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a fun fact.
This is great. You've got a process in place, and I've never met anyone that had a process in place. They think they have a process in place, but they don't run it like a company or a business. And you run it as a business.
Yep.
You've got a sellable product here. Have you talked to anybody?
No, I have not.
Are you interested?
Yeah, I think so. I think my partner and I, will probably get there. I think right now we're just kind of trying to get back like into the trend and things like that. Because we both moved recently, so we're trying to get into the trend. So maybe it'll come. I'll definitely be in contact though, Peggy.
Okay, yeah, we have a couple people that could help and or support, and then we have mentors who would be really good for you too.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's all good.
Just a quick comment.
Yeah.
I know now why you actually recommended the book Traction. You're living and executing many of the best practices in that book.
Yep.
And not a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that my partner started reading this book when we first started, and she stopped it. I really feel like you have to be at the right mindset to actually decide to make that change within your organization. And at the time, like as we were doing it, like we're writing notes and we're both reading it and we're both like, getting into it. We got to the core value section of it and we redid our core values, and we had someone within our organization that we determined at that moment as we were reviewing our core values that did not fit our core values, and we had to make the decision to let that person go. So when I tell you that this book is amazing, guys, it's truly amazing. Truly amazing.
Thank you.
Yep.
I got it on my list. I'm reading 4 books right now, but I could get it to put in line. There's always great business books out there.
Yep.
Yep. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or referrals? Know anybody that would like to be a buyer for this wholesale group? They're always looking for new leads to add to the buyers list.
Absolutely.
And there are people all over the U.S. What do you go to the REN meetings? Deborah Brasso's REN meeting?
Well, we went to Arizona.
Right, that's where we met.
Meeting. Yep, that's where we met. And I try to attend the Zoom. It's a different time zone.
Yep.
And I have 2 little ones, so I'm usually in bed early.
Yeah, they
I'm
don't
a
meet till
little embarrassed.
7.
So it's a little bit, it's a rough for me, but I do try to attend when I can. It's amazing. It's an amazing meeting.
Yeah, you're on East Coast time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're that 3 hours. She doesn't start till 7. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's in bed by 10. I'm sure.
I'm
the
definitely in bed
household.
by like 8 or 9. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure meeting the two of you. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. You guys were a real kick, I have to say.
Yeah.
I think you guys were part of the best time I had all together.
Aw.
Anybody else have any questions before we go? Arthur, what about you? You're a curious fella. Anything?
Maybe
No, I didn't have any questions. I was waving by. I had to drop off.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see you next time. That's
Bye-bye.
great.
Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe you
Friday?
can put your contact information in the chat.
Sure, absolutely. Can I do that? I don't think, unfortunately, it's not letting me.
Yeah.
Can I send it to you,
Give me
Cliff?
a
Is that
second.
okay?
You'll be able to do
We
it.
have your
Okay.
information. We can
You
send
can
it
do
out.
it now.
Yeah.
You know what
You
we'll
can do it
do,
now.
Modesta, what we're gonna do, Modesta, is we do send the recording out to everyone. We could just put your email in. Is it email? Would that be the best?
Yes, email's fine. Yep.
Okay, so we'll send out your email when we send out the recording to everyone.
Okay.
Is that good for y'all? Okay, good. And Christina, I think you should get this book, Traction. For where you are in your company, where you're starting your company up, this might be a really good book for you. Anybody who's starting a business and has some ideas about how they want it to grow, you do need traction. Let me tell you, if you're on the ski slope, you're skiing, you're slipping all the time. You need traction. You've got to dig your heels in and keep your head up. This is not easy. And Modesta has created an amazing business. I'm blown away, really. I'm just totally blown away. So thank you very much for coming on. Doug, did you have a comment or question?
Thank you, Modesta. That book's on my reading list now.
Yes.
Nothing, Doug? Okay, well, Modesta. thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I was in the bank while the meeting was going on, so I kept dipping in and out. But I was looking at the chat to see if Traction was listed there. Would you guys mind repeating where would I find that book? Is it on Amazon or
Sure.
author?
I highly recommend doing Amazon and Audible.
Oh, audio?
Yeah, don't do audio. It's just too much. You have to write things down as you read it. I'm an Audible girl, so I love Audible. I listen to Audible in the car, but this is definitely a sit down and take your pen out, and as you read, just write down notes and things like that.
I like holding books in my hand.
Yeah,
So-
but Amazon, yep.
Okay, good. So Amazon, Traction. Do you know who it's by?
It is by Gino Wickman.
Dino?
GinoWickman.
Okay.
I just put it in chat for everybody.
Oh, thank you very much,
And I
Cliff.
did the audio book link since you referenced the audio book. I
So,
wound up
yeah.
buying the CD and the ebook, the Kindle
Yeah.
version.
Okay. So you all download and save the chat. Do you know how to save the chat? Where you go to the 3 dots and save, and then you'll have, or cut and paste right into Amazon and you'll get the book. So thank you very much for coming, Modesta. I hope
for
you'll come
having
back again. We would love to have you. And, I've told you about some other meetings you might come to that people would be very interested. I go to some RIAs and other people might know some other RIAs. I think you have a sellable product and people would clamor to get it.
Perfect.
They're smart.
Oh, good. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. I appreciate it, guys.